When we entered the building, there were 4 of us. When we came out, there were 25. The difference was reinforcement, but reinforcement didn't always come. Some days it was just us, the building and us. Sergeant Yakov Pavlov, Stalingrad, September 1942. He defended a building he entered with 3 men for 58 days. That building still carries his name today. September 1942, Stalingrad, Soviet Union. The city was burning. German forces had been trying to push into the city since August. They wanted to reach the Volga River. They wanted to cut the city in 2, and every day they were getting a little closer. But Soviet forces made them pay for every step. Every street was a battle, every building a fortress, every floor its own war. Sergeant Yakov Pavlov was a young non-commissioned officer from the 42nd Guards Regiment. He was from Ukraine, 26 years old. He had been at the front since the beginning of the war. He had learned how to stay alive, how to think fast, how to follow orders. In late September 1942, he received one. Reconnoiter an apartment building near the river. Has the enemy taken it? Or is it empty? Report back. Pavlov went with 3 men. A reconnaissance mission. What did they find when they got inside? Civilians. Civilians in the basement. And a building that was empty, damaged, but still standing. Pavlov looked around. It was a high point. He could see the Volga. He could see the German positions. He could see the streets below. He got on the radio, reported in. The answer came back. Hold. Reinforcement is coming. Pavlov closed the radio, looked at his 3 men. We're holding, he said.
The defense that entered history as Pavlov's house ran from September to November 1942. The building was a 4-story apartment block facing 9th January Square in the center of Stalingrad. Its strategic position was significant. The height of the building provided wide sightlines over German positions and allowed the defenders to control German movement through the surrounding streets. Pavlov's group eventually grew to 25 men, drawn from multiple Soviet nationalities: Russians, Ukrainians, Georgians, and others. This diversity added to the symbolic weight of the defense.
The first night, Pavlov moved to the window, looked out. The streets were dark, but the dark was deceptive. The Germans were out there, close. He positioned his men, every window a firing point, every door an obstacle. They had to keep the civilians in the basement safe. The night passed quietly, very quietly. Pavlov didn't sleep, he listened. When morning came, the first attack arrived. German infantry advanced along the street, toward the building. Pavlov's men opened fire. The Germans pulled back. The first attack had been repelled, but Pavlov knew this was only the beginning. He turned to Alexandrov beside him. How much ammunition do we have? Alexandrov counted. A few days? He said. Maybe. Pavlov thought about it. When would reinforcement come? He asked on the radio. Soon. Hold. Pavlov closed the radio. The word soon meant something different in Stalingrad. Sometimes a few hours, sometimes a few days, sometimes it never came at all. Pavlov turned back to the window, looked at the street. The Germans were regrouping.
The tactical value of the building Pavlov's group defended came from several factors. Its height gave the defenders a superior firing angle against German positions below. Its position on the street front created a serious obstacle for German armor. And if the building had been taken, the Germans would have gained direct access to the Volga. For these reasons, German command made repeated attempts to take it. Each failed assault demonstrated how effective the Soviet defensive position had become.
Day 3. Reinforcement arrived. Not much, very little, but it came. They were 25 now, from different units. Different places, Russians, Ukrainians, Georgians, Kazakhs, all of them in the same building. Pavlov looked at them. He didn't know all of them, but he had to trust all of them. He called a brief meeting. This building is ours, he said. Are the Germans going to take it? No, why? Because we control every floor, every window, every corridor. If they try to come in, they'll pay for every step. Silence, then a voice. It was Kirillov, a Georgian soldier. Ammunition? Low, Pavlov said, which is why every round counts. Food? Even lower. Kirillov thought about it. And reinforcement? Pavlov paused for a moment. "It's coming," he said. Kirillov looked him in the eyes. He understood. He had asked because he wanted to know the answer. He saw it. But he didn't complain. He nodded. And everyone went back to their positions. That night, Pavlov made a decision. The building wouldn't just be defended, it would be turned into a fortress. Holes were knocked through walls to open internal passages. A tunnel was dug down to the basement. Every floor was connected to the others. Windows were reinforced with barricades. 25 men worked, day and night. Because if this building fell, the Volga fell with it.
Pavlov's group carried out a systematic engineering effort to increase the building's defensive capacity. The interfloor passages both allowed freedom of movement and created alternative defensive lines in the event of casualties in one area. The basement tunnel provided both a supply route and an emergency exit. These kinds of urban defensive tactics became one of the most effective methods used by Soviet forces throughout the Battle of Stalingrad. Pavlov's group was among the units that applied them most systematically.
Day 28. The Germans brought tanks. Pavlov saw them from the window. 2 tanks, coming from the far end of the street. Slow but deliberate. What could he do against a tank? He had an anti-tank rifle. Limited ammunition, but he had it. He called for Kirillov. "Get down to the basement. Left window. Get an angle on the left side of the tank." Kirillov understood. He ran. Pavlov waited on the upper floor. The tank was closing on the building. 100 meters, 80, 60. Kirillov fired. The tank stopped. It had been hit, but a stopped tank was still dangerous. Pavlov fired. A second hit. The tank turned, pulled back. The second tank stopped too, pulled back. Pavlov took a breath, looked out the window. The street was empty again. But he knew. The Germans had learned. They had learned that coming from one direction didn't work. Now they would try something different. That evening, Pavlov counted his men. 3 were gone. During the tank attack, inside the walls, without being seen, 22 remained. Pavlov got on the radio, reported in. 3 casualties, tank attack repelled, situation critical, ammunition running low. The answer came back. "Hold, Pavlov. Hold." Pavlov closed the radio. "We're holding," he said to himself. What else could he say?
German tank attacks against Pavlov's house faced serious constraints due to the narrow streets surrounding the building. In urban combat, tanks without infantry support were extremely vulnerable. Pavlov's group used this to their advantage. Anti-tank rifles and grenades were far more effective at close range. The casualties German command sustained in its attempts to take this building clearly demonstrated how costly Soviet urban defensive positions had become.
Day 40. Pavlov had stopped counting. How many attacks, how many days, how many men? But his mind kept counting. On its own, there was no stopping it. When they entered the building, there had been 4 of them. Then they became 25. Now 19 remained. 6 men had gone, each on a different day, each at a different window. Kirillov was still here, the Georgian soldier. He had never complained once. Every morning he got up, went to his position, waited. Alexandrov had been wounded, his left arm, but he hadn't wanted to leave. "I still have my right," he had said. He stayed. One night, Pavlov went down to the basement. The civilians were still there. An old woman, a few children, a few families. From the very first day of those 58. The old woman looked at Pavlov, held out a piece of bread. He had no idea where she had found it, but she held it out. Pavlov took it, thanked her. The woman said something in Russian. Pavlov understood. "Hold on," she had said. "Hold on, son." Pavlov went back upstairs, took his position. That night he didn't write anything down, but he kept it. The woman's face, the bread, those 2 words. "Hold on, son," as if all of Stalingrad lived in those 2 words.
The civilian presence inside Pavlov's house is one of the least known dimensions of this defense. It is known that civilians survived in the basement throughout the siege, but information about their numbers and identities remains limited. Military historians note that these civilians served both as a source of psychological motivation for the defenders and as a significant logistical burden. Supplying food and water for both soldiers and civilians grew increasingly difficult as the weeks passed. That the defense held for 58 days under these conditions remains remarkable to military historians today.
November 1942. Soviet forces launched a counteroffensive, Operation Uranus, an encirclement of German forces, and the balance in Stalingrad began to shift. The German pressure on Pavlov's house eased. Reinforcement arrived, real reinforcement, and the building had held. 58 days. Pavlov came home alive. He kept fighting. In the years that followed, he served on different fronts. He received the title Hero of the Soviet Union, but that title didn't change him much. In a post-war interview, he said this: "We didn't defend the building. The building defended us. The people inside it defended us. That woman in the basement defended us. We were just there." That sentence caught the attention of military historians years later. Pavlov had never wanted to be a hero. He had just wanted to stay there. The building still stands today in Volgograd, rebuilt, a memorial on its wall, and every year visitors come.
Pavlov's house entered history as one of the most symbolic points of the Battle of Stalingrad. Soviet propaganda used the defense as a symbol of the people's resistance, but military historians emphasize that the real significance of the defense went far beyond propaganda. The building physically stopped the German advance for 58 days. That period contributed to the broader shift in the balance of the battle. In post-war analyses by German command, this building was referenced repeatedly.
Pavlov died in 1981, in Russia, at home. He talked about Stalingrad for the rest of his life, but he always corrected the same thing. "Don't call it Pavlov's house," he would say. "That building belonged to everyone. It was Kirillov's building, Alexandrov's building, the woman in the basement's building. My name was added to it afterward. Nobody quite listened. The name stayed. Pavlov's house." Kirillov died in 1971, in Georgia. He had never gone back to Stalingrad after the war, but every September he went quiet. His family knew. That day he wouldn't speak. Alexandrov came home. His left arm never fully healed, but he went back to his farm. He worked, he lived, and the building is still standing, in Volgograd, on the bank of the Volga, rebuilt, restored. A memorial on the wall, a museum beside it. Tourists come. They take photographs. They look at the wall. The wall is smooth now, clean, no bullet marks anymore. But in 1942, it was different. Those walls spoke. Every crack told a day. Every mark told a man. 25 men, 58 days, one building. War history is mostly told through large operations, armies of millions, enormous tanks, strategic bombing campaigns. But sometimes a war comes down to a single building, 4 floors, broken windows, civilians in the basement, and 25 men inside, getting up every morning, going to sleep every night, and living that day in between. When Pavlov left, he looked back at the building one last time. He never said what he was thinking. Maybe he thanked it. Maybe he just looked. Either way, it was enough.
Pavlov's house is today one of the most significant historical sites in Volgograd. Annual visitor numbers run into the tens of thousands. The building is preserved both as a museum and as a living memorial. The military analysis of the defense is still referenced in urban combat tactics today. 25 men holding a single building against professional German forces for 58 days remains one of the rare examples of just how effective organized urban defense can be. And Pavlov's line from that interview still offers the most accurate summary. The building defended them.